There it is.
It did it.
Right. Okay. Hello. Welcome to episode 436 of the Self-Help Podcast with me, Ed Lamb, and my good pal, Sean Orford. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing very well. Very well. As just said, I've got a loaf proving in the kitchen as we speak. And it's kind of, sometimes the dough gets a bit excited and it's trying to escape out of its basket that I prove it.
Have you bashed it back in, have you?
Well, it's going to have some big holes in it, so I don't want to bash it too much. So just I'm trying to contain it as much as possible.
Nice. Yeah, I was just saying. I mean, autumn is kind of sort of getting there, not properly yet. The heating isn't on yet, which is usually a little sign for us when autumn really arrives, let alone leaves falling and all that stuff. But
yeah,
I want to get in the habit this winter of doing a weekly bake at home, getting that fresh bread smell. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, I love making bread and doing all that kind of stuff. I love cooking. I've never really got into cake making. Ree's good at making cakes. She's clever with that. But I love making the bread, the doughs, the sourdoughs. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? We'll talk maybe a bit about that today. We're talking about midlife crises, but I guess is bread making a masculine pursuit and cake making is more feminine?
Maybe it is. I was thinking of that as I said it. I mean, Ree's mum is a really good cake maker, so that's gone down that line. I do know women who do make bread.
Yeah. I mean,
I suppose bread has more of a hunky kind of appearance than cake. I don't know.
I guess it's a bit more physical in it in terms of the kneading of it and that kind of stuff. But yeah, interesting. We'll talk about that maybe today when we go to, because we're talking about midlife crises or how it's kind of related to what's going on in the world at the moment. Before we get into that, livingthepresent.co.uk for all the show notes and links as ever, and previous episodes are all online. You can find us on YouTube now, as well as all the major podcast platforms that you can subscribe via. So yeah, let's dive in, because I've got loads of notes for today, Sean. So what's sparked this one for you?
Well, I mean, it's been Mental Health Day, which is always a trigger, isn't it? But it's like we're looking at mental health in an unequal world, is the way it's been titled. And it's interesting when you look at that inequality, or the perceived inequality that we now experience. And I guess it depends where you are as to how you observe that inequality. Is it an inequality of wealth, class, status? Yeah. Is it orientation, gender?
I mean, yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, World Mental Health Day, October the 10th this year. So it's worth having a look. Yeah, mental health in an unequal world. I think you wrote equality comes when we all show each other the respect that we deserve, or as I like to say, if we all look after each other, we'll be okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to have that tattooed on my forehead. It's so simple, and it's such a simple answer to the world's problems. If we just do it.
I mean, it's worth saying as well that before we move on from this point, that just because you're less well off financially, or maybe you don't have access to, like, I don't know, you're not jetting off on holidays 4, 5, 6 times a year, or you haven't got a big house, doesn't mean that you have worse mental health. I mean, there are plenty of places in the world where people have nothing compared to what we have, and yet seemingly will probably rank higher on some kind of chart of mental health, because so
I have known so many miserable rich people. And the amount of clients that I've had who have been, I mean, ridiculously rich, like telephone number lengths of money in the bank, I'm just not happy at all.
Yeah.
Whereas you can go to places like Mumbai and people have got, from a financial point of view and a kind of material point of view, very little, but are amazingly happy.
Yeah.
Kids making cars out of plastic bottles and having real good games going on.
Yeah, exactly. And playing in, just playing with whatever they've got nearby, or streets filled with kids playing cricket, or wheeling old car tires around, having the time of their lives, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And there are times when I look at the way that toys are these days, where toys actually take the imagination out of the play. because it's already been done for you. Whereas if you have to use your imagination to develop it, it's exercising part of your system.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that in the coming weeks because Christmas is coming in it, and so there's a lot of birthdays in my family at this time of year. So it's kind of birthday present and Christmas present season. So I'm trying to keep a lid on kind of the environmental cost of all the stuff that we're going to be buying for people, which is it's harder than it sounds. Not just from kind of finding suitable things, but also from like a habitual point of view. Like it's so easy to just go to the local toy shop or wherever and down the retail park and just stuff a trolley full of plastic things and tick the box. So I'm going to try and avoid that this year if it's all possible.
So are you doing that with a limit on the cost you're going to spend, or is it a limit on the kinds of things you're going to buy?
Yeah, more the kinds of things. Yeah, I guess so. Just trying to buy things that are from sustainably, materials and that kind of thing. But again, you're right, and this kind of leads into, I guess, to this whole midlife crisis thing, because a midlife crisis, we can define it shortly, but the only reason people have midlife crisis is because they've come through a certain set of phases in their lives, starting from the day that we're born, and I guess the kind of things that we've had and the experiences we have in our imagination, or our ability to kind of have fun when there's nothing around to do and there's nothing on telly, that kind of thing, is shaped by what we do as children, isn't it?
Yeah. And and that's one of the things that does concern me about kids coming up at the moment, is that they're used to being sat down and being entertained. I press a button and it entertains me. And what happens if we do get a power cut? I mean, oh my God, we've got to talk to each other. It's like, where does it go from there? So I think that whole issue of how we are brought up does affect how we are later on in life. And we're shaping the future adults at the moment.
We are. So what's your experience as a therapist then, Sean, in terms of is midlife crisis season, is it kind of above and beyond what you're usually used to, or how are people doing out there?
Well, I'm seeing, and I don't know whether it's COVID related, because it could quite easily be, but I'm seeing more people that are out struggling in relationships and are actually getting out. I had another one this week of someone in the past retirement who's now splitting, and that kind of thing seems to be more common, and statistically the biggest area of split ups, and I'm not sure how COVID has affected this, but the biggest area was in the over 60s, and it was people retiring and thinking, I'm going to go and do something else. I don't want to stay with this person, which is like quite a big move, quite a big shock. But we see midlife crisis usually as people doing things that are kind of weird and different and not kind of normal, whatever that is. But I guess the midlife, where's midlife? If life expectancy is 60, then midlife is 30. If life expectancy is going to be into the 90s, and 1 in 5 of us in the UK will live to 100 now, is all the prediction. Then that makes midlife kind of 50s.
Well, yeah, I've got my 40th coming up later this year. And it's an interesting time. I'm not too particularly bothered about it, but it's just an interesting time to take stock. But I don't feel like 40 for me is kind of midlife, not just in a numerical point of view, because you don't know how long you can live for, do you? But I mean, I still feel relatively youthful. 50 might be a bit different, but then I've got my dad's just turned 70 fairly recently, and he's still out doing 60, 70 miles on his bike and kind of hanging out and learning new things all the time. So I have actually got a definition of midlife crisis from Wikipedia. So midlife crisis is a transition of identity and self-confidence that can occur in middle-aged individuals, typically between 45 to 65 years old. So, I mean, does everyone go through this transition, this kind of some kind of midlife crisis?
No.
No.
The way it appears to me is the people that are most susceptible to midlife crisis, the people that didn't experiment in adolescence. People in adolescence, that whole thing about dyeing your hair green and hanging cutlery on your face and experimenting with different versions of yourself and all that kind of stuff. Loads of research on that. People go through the frontal lobe disconnect, they go bonkers for a while. And then after adolescence, they come back and they kind of tend to re-establish what the previous generation were doing, but have moved it a bit. So you get a bit of an evolutionary move. But the people that didn't go through that experimental phase in adolescence very often will revisit it later in life. So you'll see the classic of people. I've seen loads of guys do this. They get to an age and then they buy a flip-top car and maybe have a face job or whatever, and they go into the gym and they're driving around in this car looking like young studs. But actually, they're not young studs at all. And the people that should be driving around in those cars and showing off should be the young guys, but they can't afford the cars. What's that kind of thing?
I mean, the idea about kind of midlife crisis being about a transition interests me, because we're all in transition all the time, aren't we? I am right now, and so are you. And but what is it about that kind of that range of life that kind of can kick off a more I don't know, extreme form of?
I think it's when something happens that make people review and do an audit of what they've been doing. And then it's like, why didn't I? Why haven't I? All that kind of stuff. Missed opportunity.
Yeah, at that stage of life, you've got potential kind of retirement looming. I guess maybe your kids, if you've had kids, are kind of grown up and starting to fly the nest and all that, and possibly as well, you're more likely to experience some kind of serious health situation, aren't you? Whether who knows what. So I guess when you combine those three things together, plus a few more bits and bobs as well, I'm sure there's maybe just a changing world that you just can't keep up with anymore. You get a recipe.
You can get sometimes the fellas who are fed up. They're fed up with working. They've got kids at university, whatever, and they feel like they're on a treadmill. They just got to keep going. They've got to pay the mortgage off, and and all that kind of stuff. And I've seen guys in that position that sometimes they get depressed, but I've also seen guys go through a midlife crisis and do kind of weird, crazy things because they just needed to do something to stimulate the system.
Yeah. Is it? So, I mean, male, female wise, is it? Does this kind of thing impact men more than women, or women have kind of menopausal things going on as well at that kind of time? So, or is it?
Yeah.
How does it affect what in terms of the work you do? What do you see?
I think it affects both. I see it in both. If you look at the amount of split ups in the over 60s, it's usually the woman, in my experience, who makes that decision. It's like, I am going, I've had enough. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that is a powerful, the guy is just retired and is quite happy to kind of settle into being a retirement at home. And the wife going, don't want this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we kind of look at the midlife crisis as something in a kind of negative way, but I guess in some ways it can be quite positive if you think about it, in the sense that if you have, if you do feel like maybe you've wasted 30 years of your life, or that you've got a low mood, or that you've got issues going on in terms of your mental health, then maybe a midlife crisis should be seen as quite a positive thing. Yeah,
but in Eastern philosophies, things like depression were never seen as something that was bad. It was your system telling you that something wasn't working right. So now you have the opportunity to get it right. And I think from that point of view, on the idea that we don't have problems, we have the learning opportunities. Okay, so what's it about? And if we are looking at our lives and thinking, I really wanted to be doing this by now, or I really wanted to do that when I was younger. And there's nothing wrong with being able to review that. I guess it's nice if couples can get to a point where they decide to do these things together. So it becomes a collective adventure. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So I think your resource is going to be a link to a Telegraph article. Is that right? Or is that just in the blog post that you've written about?
Yeah. No, I'm linking to the Telegraph. Yeah.
Because within that, I think there are 6 signs that you might need to have a think about what's going on, and I'll go through them quickly. So there's if you've had 2 or more weeks of low mood, tearfulness, irritability, a sense of hopelessness, memory loss, and problems sleeping. So those 6 things can be a good sign that all is not well.
But a lot of those things, and this is the thing that's interesting about this, is it a midlife crisis, or have you got COVID, or have you got long COVID? Because a lot of those things are what people are reporting in COVID. The kind of, the hopelessness, the loss of motivation, can't sleep, and then getting depressed because they can't sleep, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of these things that are listed there could be COVID symptoms.
Yeah.
Not just COVID if you've had COVID, but if you've been through lockdown and everything else. So, which is one of the reasons why I believe that COVID is going to have a lasting effect on us as a society for many years to come, and probably for a generation, really. So it's going to be the COVID generation coming up now.
Yep.
But I think generally people are less prepared to put up with what they put up with in the past. And people are now reactively going, no, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to change this.
Yeah. My kids just had mental health awareness day last week in school. So they had to wear yellow, or they could wear yellow if they wanted to kind of show their solidarity, and kind of, I guess it's building in that early stage awareness that you don't have to just take stuff on the chin all the time and grit your teeth. You can speak to people, you can seek help, which we'll find out in 30, 40 years, I guess, what the experiment and how we're doing. It's long-term stuff, isn't it?
But we seem to be more able to accept the fact that we're all bonkers now. And it's like more and more people are able to admit they're bonkers, they've gone through a bonkers phase, and not to be humiliated by that. And other people can accept that so-and-so's gone through a bonkers phase without kind of putting them down or being rude or abusive about it.
Yeah, I guess maybe we can see kind of humanity is going through a bit of a midlife crisis at the moment in the wider scale, because there is a bit of a general kind of awakening, isn't there, with all sorts of different groups of people. I guess you could call it wokeism. There's a kind of a sense of wokeness, which obviously is quite in terms of like the media loves to portray it as that. But there is an awakening from so many different groups of people that have maybe been pushed to the margins for years, and now they sense that now is the time for us to all kind of get together and sort this stuff out. And then then if you put on top of that environmental stuff that I'm obviously obsessed with, we are, like it or not, we are going through a massive shift in kind of consciousness and how we kind of inhabit planet Earth. So some people are going to find that liberating, and I'm quite excited about it in terms of the future that lies ahead. But there's a massive chunk of people that you've lived life for a certain way for their whole lives and aren't ready for change, are they? So it's going to be fun, right?
To me, I see myself, I am a participant in life, but I spend a lot of my life observing behaviors and people. And when I read the news, I'm not reading the news from a, oh my God point of view, but I'm reading, that's interesting. I wonder how that happens, that kind of stuff. So my thing is, I'm fascinated to see how this comes out, how it works out, how we cope with it, And what would happen if there was no fuel? If we did get to, we went through that, oh my God, there's not going to be any fuel, and everyone panicked. But if there actually was no fuel, what would people do? Which I'm sure would intrigue you a lot. But it's like people would have to be different. And I guess that's the point in a lot of this stuff, is that we're being pushed to a point where we've got to be different. And in that psychological sense of you either grow through pain or awareness, either we have the awareness to make it different, or it has to hurt us enough for us to make it different. We seem to be opting, certainly at a global scale, on the pain principle.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've met a lot of people in my environmental circles, and, there's a lot of despair mingled in there amongst the hope. And, I try and stick to that hopeful side, but I also I think I'm not despairing. I think I'm just I've recognized that, like, the way that the collective humanity, our minds work, we do need a lot of pain to to wake us up, which is a hard thing to say. And, I don't want anyone to suffer in the next 10, 15 years as a result, but I think we're just gonna have to take a lot of stuff on the chin and be ready for that change.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that it doesn't matter, in a sense, whether you believe it, don't believe it, support it, don't support it. It's like those processes are going on around us. I mean, one of the scary things that came out this week was the loss of biodiversity in the UK. Did you catch that?
Not that one specifically, no, but I've heard a little bit about it.
But I mean, there's what they're looking at, the relative number of species year on year, and the decline in the UK is quite extraordinary. You're up to, like, in some areas, 50% of what was there a generation ago, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's mad. Yeah, I mean, just coming back to the midlife crisis stuff then. So, I mean, I did have a question about how can we avoid a midlife crisis, but maybe as I think on about it, it's not something that we need to avoid as such, because, it might, if you're experiencing some of those 6 signs, then you don't need to just bury your head in the sand. You need to kind of confront it and change your life, for the better. And part of that might be buying a sports car or going to the gym, or, possibly the right thing to do might even be to find, or to kind of end the relationship you're in. This is quite heavy stuff that you need to think about seriously. But we can change our lives at any moment, can't we?
And I guess that idea that we have personal power is a really important thing, because we do have personal power to affect ourselves and other people around us, but also the environment. And if we are all being called to account at the moment because of the way we've treated the planet, whether it's plastics or whatever, we do have a choice. We each individually have a choice. But very often people will say to me, yeah, but I'm only one person, I can't do much. But if a lot of one persons do something, then a lot of change happens. Yeah, we have power. We do have power. Yeah.
And it's all about, I guess, finding, we don't all need to be Elon Musk's or Jeff Bezos's and famous, all that kind of stuff. But, you can find enjoyment and purpose in all sorts of different little ways, can't you?
Yeah. And that is so important. And one of the things that's really weird is you and I are sat here having this conversation, having a cup of coffee or whatever, and it's like, does it matter whether you've got £10 million in the bank and I've got £7 million in the bank or whatever? Does it actually make any difference to the moment that we're in? And yet people get so obsessed with, what have I got? What have I got? I need more.
Yeah.
Do you need more? Maybe you need another cup of coffee, but do you need another million in the bank? Yeah.
I know. Yeah, it's fascinating. That, I guess, that leads us back to maybe my resource will be for the Live in the Present course that we've done through the podcast. A couple of points just to kind of get people started on that journey of finding out what it is you want. You might think you need £1 million, but if you actually plot it out what it is that you really want in life, you might find that you actually don't need any kind of financial help. You just might need to rejig a few relationships and downscale your life a little bit in terms of your house and your outgoings, that kind of thing, and take it a bit more easy.
One of the things I've been fascinated about, because I've got the camper van and reading about people's stories online, and the amount of people that have decided to go for what they're calling real estate rather than real estate, and actually selling their houses and getting fairly big vans and going out with the kids and saying, okay, let's go and experience the world.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, I see quite a lot of that stuff in my cycling circles as well. People just getting on a bike and packing a few bags on on the back and on the front, and just
enough.
It's been a bit tricky, obviously, with the pandemic, but yeah, you can travel the world on a bike quite easily.
So how many tires would it take you to cycle around the world?
Oh, good question. I don't know. Yeah, it depends a lot. In fact, I'll put in my resources as well. There's a YouTube channel that I follow, and it's a couple that have been traveling the world in the last couple of years, and they've done a lot in terms of documenting the journey, but also saying how they built the bikes and what kind of bikes they used so that they would be sturdy enough to do 20,000 miles. So
interesting. And are they literally going to go around the world, come back again?
Well, they were. Yeah, I think they started in Finland, and they were down through Africa when the pandemic hit, and they kind of had to loiter around there. So but they're fine. They don't feel frustrated. They're kind of quite carefree guys. Really, really cool channel, actually. So yeah, I'll put that in my resource of the week. And yours is the Telegraph article. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. But I think that the issue is, if anybody that is listening to this, either now or at some point in the future, feels that they're going through that midlife crisis, the key is do something about it. Don't just sit there and sit on it. Actually try and understand what's going on for yourself. And maybe you need to sit down with someone else and talk about it.
Yes.
But whatever you do it positively. Yeah. Don't scare the horses. Don't damage anybody. Just try and do what you need to do to get your life right. Yeah.
Agreed. Cool. Yeah. All right, Sean, that was a good one. Enjoy that.
Yeah. I enjoy everyone.
Of course you do. Of course, me too. All right, we'll leave it there. liveinthepresent.co.uk for all the show notes and links, and drop us a line if you want to. Is anything you would like us to discuss in a forthcoming episode? But yeah, Sean, you take care till next week.
And you take care now. Bye.
See you, Rob.
Bye.
Bye.